Welcome to This Explainer. Tonight, we are embarking on a truly chilling journey. We're heading deep into the dark, isolated, and honestly pretty suffocating expanses of the Venezuelan and Colombian plains, a vast region known as the Llanos. Now, I want you to picture yourself walking alone at night out there. The air is thick, it's oppressive, the moon is completely hidden behind these heavy, bruised clouds, and the tall grass is just rustling around your knees. And suddenly, you hear it. A faint, incredibly slow whistle drifting through the dead trees. It's a delicate, almost musical sound, but it is a sound that has literally paralyzed grown men with primal terror for well over a century. Today, we're going to thoroughly dissect the terrifying legend of El Silbón, or the Whistler, and we are going to uncover the profound, blood-soaked, real-world nightmares that actually birthed him. Right off the bat, we are confronted with this terrifying, completely counterintuitive paradox of the whistle. The saying goes, when his whistle sounds close, he is far, but when it sounds far, he is right behind you. I mean, think about the sheer psychological warfare of that for a second. Imagine the absolute panic of standing in the dark, hearing that whistling fade away into the distance, and feeling your muscles finally relax because your brain is tricked into a false sense of security. Only then do you realize that the fading sound actually means the monster is breathing right down your neck. It's a masterful, incredibly cruel inversion of how human beings naturally perceive danger. So let's dive into Act 1, the scare. To really understand this monster, we have to plunge right into his gruesome origin story. This is one of those horrific tales passed down by the campfire for generations. You know the kind, designed to scare children into absolute obedience and terrify adults into good moral behavior. And I have to warn you right now, the details of how El Silbón came to be are visceral, they're bloody, and they are deeply unsettling. So we set the scene in the late 19th century with a spoiled, temperamental young man. According to the lore, this kid was indulged his entire life. He grew up into an arrogant, entitled guy who spent his days just wasting away in local taverns. But one evening, he flies into a violent, totally unhinged rage simply because his dinner wasn't to his liking. He had this very specific, dark appetite. He demanded to eat deer entrails. Without a second thought, he orders his exhausted, aging father to go out into the pitch-black woods and hunt one down for him.
And you can just see how quickly this entitlement escalates into unspeakable atrocity. The father, tired and unsuccessful in the dark, returns from the hunt empty-handed, while the son, completely blinded by this drunken, monstrous fury, brutally attacks and murders his own father right there in the mud of the woods. But guys, the horror deepens. To satisfy that twisted craving we just talked about, the son actually cuts open his father's chest, he harvests the organs, wraps that bloody mass up in a shirt, and brings them right back to the family home. He then tricks his own mother into cooking the horrifying meal. It's just this ultimate story of betrayal and the absolute violation of our deepest human taboos.
So, as you can imagine, the retribution for this crime is unimaginably brutal. When the mother ultimately realizes what is boiling in the cooking pot, her agonizing screams pierce the night air. And that's when the boy's grandfather steps in to deliver a macabre, rhythmic punishment. The young man is dragged outside and bound tightly to a wooden post right in the middle of the plains. His back is slowly, methodically flayed open with a traditional rawhide cattle whip. Then excruciatingly hot chili pepper, locally known as ají, and burning aguardiente are violently rubbed deep into those open, bleeding wounds. Finally, they unleash a terrifying rabid demon dog named Tureco to chase him down, violently biting at his bleeding heels until the end of time.
And this brings us to the exact moment the man dies and the monster is officially born. The grandfather screams this chilling curse into the night, condemning the boy to wander the desolate plains forever. He's forced to carry this heavy, filthy sack containing the picked clean bones of his murdered father. It's this incredibly powerful curse that stripped away his humanity entirely. He wasn't a son anymore, he wasn't even a man, he became an eternal vessel of guilt, just a creature of agonizing, never-ending punishment.
Which brings us to Act 2, Anatomy of a Nightmare.
Because if you find yourself lost in the Venezuelan plains at 3 in the morning, what exactly is hunting you out there in the dark? Let's analyze the anatomy of this nightmare. El Silbón is definitely not just your regular, ethereal, floaty ghost. Witnesses describe a towering, unnatural physical figure that can stretch up to 6 meters tall. That is so impossibly tall, he practically glides right through the treetops. He is horribly emaciated, basically just a skeletal frame hidden beneath a tattered, traditional wide-brimmed hat that casts his face in eternal shadow. And, of course, most dreadfully, he is always dragging that filthy, heavy sack of his father's bones, which rattle with this sickening sound with every agonizing step he takes through the brush. And here is exactly how he announces his arrival from the shadows.
He emits a slow, haunting whistle that perfectly follows the musical scale do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si. It's this chilling, hollow echo carried on the wind. But the true horror, like we established earlier, lies in the deception. If that musical scale sounds loud and booming right next to your ear, you can actually breathe a huge sigh of relief. The specter is miles away across the savannah. But if you really have to strain your ears in the dead of night to hear a faint, delicate melody drifting on the breeze, run. Seriously, run. Because he is already towering right behind you in the dark.
Now, El Silbón doesn't just kill randomly. He actually acts as a sort of supernatural vigilante with a very specific palate. He actively hunts down drunks, womanizers, and the greedy, seeking to punish those who mirror his own mortal sins. If he targets you, your only protections are bizarrely specific to his original torture. To survive, you must brandish a cattle whip, throw hot chili peppers at him, or have a fiercely barking dog by your side to remind him of that demon dog Tureko. These are the physical, painful reminders of his trauma, and they are quite literally the only things in this world that will make him flee back into the darkness.
But perhaps the most spine-tingling and just paralyzing part of his entire lore is the midnight bone count. See, sometimes El Silbón doesn't actually chase you. Instead, he will quietly approach a rural, isolated home in the dead of night. He'll sit on the front porch, open up that filthy sack, and slowly, one by one, count the bones of his murdered father. Crack, crack. If the people inside wake up, hear the bones clacking against each other, and acknowledge his presence, they are totally safe. But if they sleep deeply through the noise, and no one hears the count, by the time the sun rises over the plains, someone inside that house will be dead.
All right, let's get into Act 3, Gutting the Myth. Okay, let's turn on the lights for a moment. We've experienced the scare, but now it's time to intellectually deconstruct and really gut this legend to its core. Because as we know, monsters rarely just appear out of nowhere, right? They are born from profound socio-political and historical anxieties. Referencing some fascinating academic research, like this study from the University of North Florida, we see that El Silbón was so much more than just a campfire spooky story. In the 19th century, this terrifying myth acted as a highly calculated and incredibly effective tool for social control. The rural communities of the Llanos were vast, unpoliced, and completely isolated, so they quite literally had to create a monster to police themselves.
And just notice how precisely the monster's targets line up with the exact needs of an isolated, struggling community. By claiming a 6-meter-tall ghost was out in the dark drinking the blood of drunks and philanderers right out of their belly buttons, the community successfully curbed male infidelity and severe drunkenness without ever needing a police force. The bloody origin story of the son murdering the father? That was a brutal warning utilized to enforce a strict family hierarchy and absolute respect for elders. It was a supernatural warning against greed and entitlement that kept nocturnal wanderers trembling in their beds instead of wandering the plains and causing trouble.
We can also uncover the deep, hidden historical trauma baked directly into the myth. Let's examine the demon dog, Tureko, for a second. Academic researchers point out this absolutely fascinating and tragic linguistic twist. The word Tureko, or Tudesco, actually derives from the Germanic word Tudiska. Historically, this specific term was used in Venezuela to describe the fierce, massive dogs brought over by early European colonizers, dogs that were specifically used to attack, terrorize, and subdue the indigenous populations. So the demonic dog eternally torturing the cursed son is a literal folklore manifestation of the trauma and bloodshed of violent colonization echoing through centuries of history.
We also see this really deep, simmering economic disparity reflected in the characters. The greedy, spoiled son who demands fine meats without ever working a single day for them, he perfectly represents the growing urban wealth, excess, and unearned entitlement that the rural populations deeply resented. Conversely, the hard-working, exhausted father who dies violently while just trying to please his son represents the grueling, often thankless, and frequently fatal struggle of life on the rural plains. So the murder itself is a very dark metaphor for the extreme class resentment and economic division bubbling up post-independence.
So, this legend is, at its absolute core, an echo of war. The themes of horrific violence, shattered families, wandering condemned souls, and brutal, agonizing punishments didn't just come from a vacuum. They connect directly to the lingering, devastating psychological scars left by the Venezuelan War of Independence. The landscape of the Llanos was quite literally soaked in blood for years, and the collective psyche of the people living there desperately needed an outlet.
They translated that unimaginable real-world horror and mass death into a supernatural cautionary tale that they could at least attempt to understand and maybe even control. Here we see the vital documentation of these oral traditions in the Portuguese estate. And it's really a testament to how oral tradition miraculously transforms complex, devastating societal traumas into educational folklore. Honestly, it is a brilliant psychological survival mechanism. By putting a physical face, a terrifying sound, and a name to the invisible terror of the times, the community could teach future generations how to navigate a highly dangerous, unpredictable, and often violently chaotic world.
And that leads us to Act 4, an immortal echo.
The truly fascinating thing about El Silbón is that he absolutely refuses to stay buried in the 19th century. Despite all our modern technology, our smartphones, and our scientific understanding, this specter continues to actively haunt our modern cultural psyche today. The myth has mutated and adapted to the 21st century so seamlessly. We have critically acclaimed feature films, heavy metal bands writing these incredibly dark anthems about him, and even an entire international El Silbón festival held every single November in Venezuela. But perhaps the most chilling modern evolution is the viral dashcam footage. Modern truck drivers hauling cargo down pitch-black, empty highways still swap terrified stories over the radio about hearing a faint, musical whistle slicing through the roar of their engines or catching a fleeting glimpse of a towering, unnatural figure in their rearview mirrors.
Back in 2018, the legend hit the big screen in the award-winning film El Silbón: Origins. What is so fascinating here is that the filmmakers didn't just make a cheap jump-scare slasher movie. No, they translated this century-old oral tradition into an oppressive, deeply atmospheric drama about the real-world horrors of domestic violence and endless cycles of abuse. They proved that the core themes of the legend, guilt, violence, and punishment, are just as relevant and just as terrifying today as they were 100 years ago.
And his dark grip extends deeply into modern music as well. Listen to the themes in this quote from a dark folk horror song by the band Audio Mechanica. It really highlights how contemporary artists continue to recite his gruesome origin with this blend of reverence and fear. They sing about the blood of vengeance and the patriarch punishing the mortal crime. It proves the legend's lasting, visceral grip on the human imagination. We are still utterly captivated and honestly deeply unsettled by the profound darkness of this story.
Ultimately, the legend endures not because we actually believe in a 6-meter-tall ghost dragging a heavy sack of bones around. It endures because it so perfectly encapsulates the timeless, immortal human fear of the dark. It preys on our deep-seated, internal fears of guilt. It plays on the dread of inescapable punishment for our own mortal sins. And it channels the absolute paralyzing terror of the unknown, the things that creep and watch us just beyond the flickering light of the campfire.
So, we've broken down the history, the sociology, and the deep psychology of the myth. But I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought. We can rationalize the horror all we want in the safety of the daylight, but what are you going to do the next time you are walking alone at night, the wind dies down to a dead calm, and you hear a faint, delicate, musical whistle drifting towards you from the utter darkness? Did we just dissect a myth on this explainer today, or were we warning you about a very real monster? Thank you for joining me. Keep the lights on.